So there I was about to press publish on my Jiggle Physics video when this game dropped out of nowhere. This is Hi-Fi Rush, one of the coolest stylized games I've seen in a very long time, and of course, we're gonna talk about it today. Welcome to the next episode of Stylized Station. Hi-Fi Rush pulls a lot of influence from various sources in the gaming and entertainment industry. The gameplay and art direction are a unique blend of different elements, taking inspiration from games like Chainsaw Lollipop, Sunset Overdrive, Guitar Hero, Jet Set Radio, and No Straight Roads. The fast-paced and over-the-top action is reminiscent of Devil May Cry and Bayonetta. The villains in the game are straight out of Borderlands, with their quirky and over-the-top personalities. At the same time, the protagonists have a more cartoon-like feel, reminiscent of early 2000s Cartoon Network shows and Edgar Wright's Scott Pilgrim.
Holy crap!
The game is also filled with comic book references, similar to the style of Into the Spider-Verse, with tons of references to traditional Western comics, graphic novels, and even some anime like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Let's give it a go, go, go!
But a real standout aspect of HFR is also the music. The game features an epic soundtrack with bangers from artists like The Black Keys and 9 Inch Nails, making you feel like a true badass during every fight. And that's all great, but this is Stylized Station, so let's talk about the technical stuff. First, let's dive into the visual aspect of this game. I'm a big fan of these graphics. Cell shading is a widespread technique among developers, but it's rare that a game successfully captures the look and feel of a real cartoon. But what is cell shading? Cell shading is a rendering technique used in video games and animation to create a stylized, cartoon-like appearance. It's achieved using flat, colored cells to simulate the shading and shadows on 3D models rather than using more realistic shading techniques like Phong or Lambert. This gives the game a more hand-drawn look, fitting for stylized games that aim to mimic the look of comics or animation. And don't worry, cell shading is going to have its own entire dedicated video sometime in the future, so make sure to subscribe so you're notified when that video comes out. And if you're more serious about learning game art, you can check out my 2 courses where I'll teach you everything from creating beautiful flowing grass, to trees, to other assets, and even anime-style texturing. I'll leave a link in the description if you want to learn more. Cell shading is really important for stylized games because it allows developers to create a unique and distinct visual style that sets apart their game from others. I've noticed in recent years there's a trend that stylized games are always created with cell shaded characters but with a PBR environment. This approach can have mixed results as it can be difficult to reconcile the two styles and make them feel cohesive. One example of this approach is the game The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which uses cel-shaded characters but has a more realistic environment. HFR takes a very different approach by going all in on cel shading, using the technique throughout the game for both characters and environments. This approach allows the game to fully embrace its stylized aesthetic, creating a cohesive and consistent visual style. Creating a visually stunning game requires more than just a well-designed, cel-shaded, and colorful world. Hi-Fi Rush stands out by incorporating hand-drawn techniques commonly found in comic books, giving the game's environments a unique personality and charm. So let's talk about those techniques. One of the techniques used in HFR is cross-hatching. This is a technique traditionally used in comic book art and illustration to create the illusion of depth and texture. It is achieved by drawing a series of closely spaced parallel lines in one direction, and then another set of lines in a different direction over the top of the first set of lines. The intersecting lines create a grid-like pattern that can indicate shadows and create the illusion of three-dimensionality. In Hi-Fi Rush, the developers have used a simplified version of cross-hatching as an alternative to ambient occlusion, a common technique used in video games to simulate how light interacts with objects in a scene. By cross-hatching in the areas where ambient occlusion would typically occur, the game's environments have a more hand-drawn and illustrated feel, adding a unique aesthetic to the game. This can be observed throughout the game and is particularly notable in the way the game represents shadows and depth in the environments. If you've been watching these clips closely, you may have noticed another technique. Take a look at this clip here. If you look at the reflections, you might notice that the reflections seem to be broken up into little dots instead of solid reflections. This is an homage to a technique called Ben-Day dotting, and is a technique used in comic book art, illustration, and other print media to create the illustration of tone and texture. In traditional media, Ben-Day dotting can be used to simulate lighting, reflections, and shadows on surfaces and create patterns, such as the iconic Roy Lichtenstein's comic book art. Just like simplified cross-hatching, HFR also uses a variation of Ben-Day dotting all over its environments, mainly in the reflections on the ground and in the various lighting sources scattered all over the game's environments. I've also found evidence of Ben-Day dotting on other emissive surfaces like in the lava.
2 volcanoes!
The creative use of cross-hatching and Ben-Day dotting in Hi-Fi Rush is a really clever contrast. Cross-hatching is typically used in areas of shadow and darkness, while the Ben-Day dotting technique creates the illusion of lights and reflections. This way, the two techniques are distinct and are always balanced and complemented with little to no overlaps. These two techniques have no real design advantage in a game. This is simply an aesthetic choice made by the team to give HFR a unique and truly distinct style. A great example of the art team going above and beyond to give us a truly mind-blowing and creative visual experience. In Hi-Fi Rush, the developers at Tango Gameworks have taken great care to ensure that the game's animation is top-notch. Not only are the characters animated with fluid and dynamic movements, but the entire game world is also animated to the beat of music, giving it a Cuphead-like visual heartbeat. As the player progresses through the game, they will notice that the environment is moving and changing in time with the music. The trees sway, the lights flicker, and the enemies move in sync with the beat. This rhythmic animation helps to create a sense of immersion for the player, making the game world feel like a living, breathing place. The animation helps convey the game's mood and atmosphere, making players feel like they are genuinely a part of this world. A great example of this on-beat animation are the idle and running animations of Chai. As you run through the world, Chai's running animations always sync up with the beat, regardless of the tempo of the song. And when you stop moving, Chai breaks into this amazing idle animation, where he snaps his fingers and stomps to the beat. I have looked at this animation for hours, and there's always something else you notice about it. His scarf blowing in the wind, his shoelaces bouncing on his shoe, the great little snap animation when he snaps his fingers. This game's animation feels so polished and refined, it really makes you appreciate how much work went into the animations of this game. And I know you've noticed the VFX, and don't worry, we will get into that in a bit. But if we're talking about polish, we have to discuss the cutscenes. HFR is littered with 2D and 3D cutscenes exploding with life and great expressive animation, giving all the beautifully designed characters a chance to show their personality through their motion. Chai's misplaced, goofy confidence, 808's playful nature, and Rekka's brutal, heavy-handed approach all come through in their animations in the cutscenes, both 2D and 3D.
Well, we had a good run.
Look, man, I think we have more in common than we do apart. How about...
The animators of HFR have paid meticulous attention to the 12 principles of animation, resulting in animations dripping with style and character. The 12 principles of animation are guidelines that help animators create believable and engaging movements by focusing on concepts such as timing, spacing, exaggeration, follow-through, and more. But you're probably wondering, how is this animation achieved? Typically, character animation in video games can be achieved through two main techniques: motion capture and keyframing. Motion capture involves recording an actor's movements and then using that data to animate a digital character. In technical terms, keyframing creates a series of key poses or keyframes that define a particular animation's starting and end points. The animator then creates in-between frames, known as tweening, to fill the gap between the keyframes and create a smooth, lifelike movement. The animator can then adjust the timing, spacing, and other properties of the keyframes, such as the velocity of the movement, the easing, and the orientation of the character, and can also add additional keyframes to refine the animation. Additionally, keyframing allows animators to control the more subtle aspects of animation, such as facial expressions, hand gestures, and body language by manually creating keyframes for these elements. This allows animators to create more expressive and believable characters and to convey emotion and personality through animation. HFR uses keyframing to give it a distinct style. Keyframing allows the developer to create highly stylized and expressive animations while maintaining a high level of control over the movement of the character. Visual effects play a crucial role in video games, as they can enhance the overall game experience by adding a unique style and personality to the game. One of the things that made Hi-Fi Rush stand out most to me was its VFX. The game is filled with a combination of over-the-top and subtle VFX that are heavily inspired by traditional comic book VFX. Traditional comics often use VFX to emphasize hits and motion in action scenes. This helps to make the scenes more dynamic and engaging and to draw the reader's attention to the most important aspects of the story. One classic example of this is the large use of bam and boom effects in Batman comics whenever there's a big hit. These are called onomatopoeia effects and help to emphasize the impact of the hit and to make the scene feel more intense. In Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, onomatopoeia is used to emphasize various actions, such as the sound of punches, kicks, and explosions. These sound effects are displayed on screen as text, often in bright and bold letters, to draw the viewer's attention to the action. This approach helps to make the action scenes more dynamic and engaging, as it emphasizes the impact of the actions and helps create a sense of intensity. HFR has taken these onomatopoeia effects and cranked them up to 100. Just like how comics use onomatopoeia to create big hits, hitting a successful combo in HFR will almost always end with one as well, providing visual feedback to the player that they just dealt big damage to an enemy. These effects are also used in more subtle scenarios, such as the snap in Chai's idle animation and various hit effects throughout the cutscenes. In addition to the use of large impact effects, traditional comics also use other VFX elements to add motion to the characters. For example, motion lines, dash effects, and dust clouds are used to show speed and trajectory of a character's movements. These VFX elements help to make the game and scene feel more dynamic and to give the reader a better understanding of what is happening in the story. HFR is littered with these effects. Every combat phase and cutscene has so many nods to comic book VFX packed into it, it's honestly hard to keep track of. The VFX of this game are also used to add emphasis to emotions, such as shock. Often when a character is surprised or feels another strong emotion, there's almost always a subtle effect to go along with it to help sell the feel. Speed lines, also known as motion lines, are used in anime and comic books to emphasize speed and movement. This helps to give the viewer a better understanding of the movement and trajectory of the object, making the scene easier to follow and understand. In Hi-Fi Rush, speed lines are used in the same way to emphasize movement.
Wait, what?
Backgrounds can be animated via a shader to create directional movement, emphasizing a direction, and speed lines can also be overlaid on top of a scene to emphasize intensity. In a world of ray tracing, AI facial animation, and hyperrealism, Hi-Fi Rush is a breath of fresh air. It brings back the nostalgia of onomatopoeia effects, hand-drawn frames, and speed lines. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest things can bring us the most joy. The graphics may not be as advanced as other games, but to me, that's what makes Hi-Fi Rush so unique. It's a love letter to classic comic books and anime, a celebration of the art form that has captured the hearts of millions worldwide. As you play this game, you can't help but feel the passion that went into its creation, the attention to detail, the way each frame is carefully crafted, and the way the music and sound effects enhance the experience all come together to create something truly special. Hi-Fi Rush really is more than just a game. It's a reminder of the power of imagination and creativity, of the joy that can be found in the simple things. It's a celebration of the art form that has captured the hearts of many, and it's a testament to the idea that even in a world of advanced technology, the things that matter most are the ones that come from the heart. So yeah, Hi-Fi Rush is pretty cool.